the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Bettor Edge. Visit bettoredge.com today. Use code SPOTTRACK, get yourself $20 off. How about dropping a bet on the NBA Finals, which we're about to get to with Keith Smith, the great Keith Smith. Again, code SPOTTRACK at registration. Download the app or visit bettoredge.com and get started today. Here's the plan. It's a pretty simple one. It's a big month for the NFL, at least early on here, as June 1st has now passed. So we're going to talk about what that means for some of these contracts. 13 post 6-1 designated releases, a couple of retirements that are pending but soon to be processed, and the idea of dead cap going forward as it is a powerful entity, and why we'll see some transactions happen in the coming days and weeks because of it. That's on the back end. To start here, though, we got to get to some NBA basketball because the finals are set, the Knicks are out, and Keith Smith's going to join me right now to dispel, I think, some of the rumors, but we'll see what he says. Keith, lots of work to do still, and I'm going to give you a compliment and then let you run free for a while here.
Okay.
One of the reasons that we enjoy your work so much is even in moments where the fire alarms are sounding and the social media pipeline is scorching hot with my team is the worst, I've got to blow it up and start over, you can wake up the next morning and be measured and be well-tempered and give a sound answer to even some of the loudest critics out there. So I'm going to give you the floor. How much change, if any, is coming to this Knicks team over the next 6 to 8 weeks?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be major changes made. I think it's hard, right? Because whenever your team loses, you feel like they failed. It almost doesn't matter how far they go. You talk yourself into they're going to win the next round until you win a title, and then that's it. And that's where I think sports fans in general, but especially NBA fans, get so caught up in. It's like, this was still a really good season for the Knicks. They still accomplished a lot more than they have in any number of years recently. And this team, it's important to step back too and say, this team was kind of put together. I don't want to say on the fly, because that sounds like there wasn't purpose behind the moves, but they made the big Mikal Bridges trade about a year ago, right at the start of the NBA offseason. Then right on the eve of training camp, they go out and get Karl-Anthony Towns, and that's changing everything there. And it all came together in a really good, solid run. So it's kind of a long way to say, I don't know that we're going to get major changes in, let's say, their top 5 guys, the 5 regular starters. I think they'll all be back. We'll see what happens with Mitchell Robinson, because if they do want to make a meaningful upgrade, he's probably in the deal simply because of making the math work. But beyond that, it's going to be moves around the edges of the rotation. And then that's kind of, where they're at is life as a team that is now closing in very tightly on the second apron.
Yeah, there's not a free agent list that makes you think that shakeups are coming. This would have to be a forced entity with one of the major players you're talking about, a Josh Hart, a Robinson. Obviously many people have pushed out to the Karl-Anthony Towns situation, but you're right. That was October 2nd when that trade process. Yep. We were on the heels of the NBA season, and internally that the plans were in place, but even from a coaching standpoint, there was a shift. There was a mindset shift to go from a DiVincenzo type 3-point specialist to a Karl-Anthony Towns who's just a different animal in every respect, right? I mean, I'm not sure that anybody has been able to figure out the perfect way to use him, and that's probably why the tunnels are so loud right now. But I'm with you, and I'll just step back even one more rung down the ladder and ask you about Thibodeau, the coach, because I know that he's been a man of contention his entire career for his personality, his usage, the way he runs his roster. He did change course for this series, and it's another point I want to get to, which is the style of play of these Knicks. But is he on the hot seat at least a little bit in your opinion here, Keith?
It's funny. I said to a friend of mine just this morning, I said, I don't think he's on the hot seat, but I think like somebody's standing there ready to turn the burner on.
Yeah.
Because I think what's going to happen is, barring something weird coming out in the next couple of days, I don't think he gets fired this summer. But I think what's going to happen, let's say they start like 10-10 next year, and it's just a slow start, and it's not looking, like they're going to be back in contention for whatever reason, then I think maybe they make a move then. So I think he'll be back. I think they're internally very happy with the where the team has gone. I think, again, they got excited too about, man, we're right here. We're pushing forward with this group, but I think they know we have Anunoby, Bridges, Brunson, Towns, all under contract for the next few seasons. Josh Hart as well. They've got to deal with the extension for Bridges, but my guess is when Brunson took a little less in his extension, Bridges is probably going to do the same, and that'll give them a little bit more flexibility as they kind of go out forward. But I think with that, they're going to really kind of say, all right, Tibbs is our guy. Let's try to clean things up, give him maybe a couple more defenders that he can put out there on the floor at times. That's why I'm not sold Robinson's going to get moved.
Yeah.
I think they're really going to do what they need to do to kind of keep things in place as best they can.
So then does the style need to change in order for them to actually get to the finish line here? Because it certainly, they made adjustments, appropriate adjustments, whether that was, top-down pressure or not, but there was more usage of this roster. They did try to match some of the style of play of the Pacers, which is extremely high pace. That old Phoenix Suns team, it looked like out there for at times from Indiana. Sure. I don't think the plan this offseason is to do that, right? Is to actually start to look more like that. But can they mitigate that now, knowing, I don't think this is incorrect, that Indiana is one of the top two teams of the East heading into next season, right? It's just how it's going to play out with Boston's situation.
Yeah, Indiana's not going anywhere. I don't think Cleveland's going to blow their team up. So, yeah, if you're to the Knicks, you have to try to, no pun intended, keep pace here with those teams. So I think what they need to look at is two things on each end of the floor. I would like to see them play a little faster. Yeah. I think they get so bogged down into we have to play in the half court because of Brunson and Towns, who excel in the half court. I mean, the Knicks were a terrific offensive team this year, and we're only just kind of so-so as a defensive team, which sounds really weird for a Tom Thibodeau coach team, but that's how it played out. But I would like to see them push a little more. That's going to be a mindset change for Jalen Brunson. They are very typical. Get the ball on the defensive end, whether it's a rebound or a turnover, get it to Brunson, and then Brunson walks it up. They play deep into the shot clock, and they more often than not will make shots because they have a bunch of good shot makers, but it's not the cleanest, it's not the easiest offense. And when you go up against a really good defensive team, they can choke that off a little bit. You saw that at moments, even though they beat the Celtics, when the Celtics had success, it was because they were really shutting the Knicks down on the offensive end. Now, defensively, it's the same two guys. It's Brunson and Towns. Brunson's a competitive defender, but he's small. He's not. No one's going to ever be not accused, but no one's ever going to make the claim that he's a good defensive player. He just isn't. He's just small, and that's something you got to work around. Towns is a whole other story. There's challenges when you play him as your five, which the Knicks did for a lot of the year and a lot of the playoffs, of are you going to have enough rim protection? What is that going to look like? When they switched to Mitchell Robinson, it looked a lot better. So I think you may see next year, they may go into things, if Robinson's on the roster, if they make another move, where it is Towns moves back to being more of a four with a big alongside him, like what worked so well for Minnesota, putting together their defense. And now you've got kind of, you could be a little bit more flexible than Josh Hart, who's just a ball of energy. I think is a better fit coming off the bench anyway. And that's how you play it out, kind of the way they finished out these playoffs. I think that there's a good chance that's the way this goes.
I actually agree. I think the adjustments that were made here against Indiana are going to benefit them throughout the offseason and probably make them a better roster in 2025-26, despite the fact that, some kind of small minor tweak is coming here.
Sure.
It's not going to be of the grand super size that I think the Twitter spheres are hoping for, right? And
well, you get spoiled too, right?
Of course, the league does this to us.
They made they made the Towns trade. Yeah, Knicks fans are going to be like, "Hey, Giannis got traded here, and Durant, and why are we not doing anything?" And it's like, because you did three major things a year ago. Like that's you can't within a 1 year transaction cycle, they acquired Anunoby, Bridges, and Towns. Like you did a lot. Like we need to, sometimes it takes a minute to breathe a little. One thing I will say too, and I meant to say this before, I think in the regular season, and this is probably a top-down pressure, they need to tell Tibbs, like, you got to lean on the bench more.
Got to play
like,
11 players, right?
Yeah, you got to, at least 9, 10 guys every night, and get these guys from the high 30s, low 40s in these regular season games. Put that needs to be down into the low to mid 30s. Let's knock a few minutes off every guy, because I think by the end of the Pacers series too, you could see they were tired. And I don't think it was any one single game. I don't even think it was that single series. I think it was a cumulative effect of for months and months of grinding these guys down that they just eventually ran out of gas.
Yeah, I think you're hitting all the right notes here, right? And just to dispel this, because this is going to be where many of the mouths go, adding a Giannis or a Durant to this roster is going to slow them down, not speed them up, right? It's completely counterintuitive to all the points that we're all trying to make here, correct?
Yeah, especially Durant. Durant doesn't play fast at this point in his career. Giannis, it's a little bit like LeBron, where the highlights are grabs a rebound, goes full court and dunks, right? And that's where it's like everybody's like, man, how are you going to ever slow this guy down? But the reality is 99% of the time, it's more grab the rebound, dribble it up the floor, get into something, and then make the play from there. And that's where, those guys are not going to turn them into a track meet kind of team. That said, if they could get Giannis for a reasonable price, by all means, go do it. I'm not going to argue against that by any means, but I just don't know that's going to be in the cards. But I will say, if we do get there and Giannis is available via trade, I do think we're going to be in a position where the Knicks will be involved, just because everybody's going to be involved to some extent.
That's right. And they do have the salary to make it work from a matching standpoint. So they're going to be in that conversation just from a semantic standpoint, if nothing more. But, successful season, we can't discount what they've done. Possibly just some strategic changes to going forward versus massive roster construction changes. As you've highlighted in a bunch of your pieces, we're going to have plenty of teams doing that this offseason, right? There's going to be serious contenders to drop in a Durant and a Giannis to really shake things up. And that's only two names. This is a league that gives us 5 to 6 blockbuster trades every offseason. So I don't know that the Knicks necessarily involved in those conversations. But we'll see. Again, as you noted, as you started with, both Minnesota and New York, two absolute Final Four, bottom of top of the list teams here, made an October 2nd trade. So there's no rush, and there is really no reason to say yes or no to any of this right now. There's time for this all to percolate, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. This is going to be a major offseason as far as trades go. It equals out. There's a couple of things that make the trade market really buzz, and is there a lot of cap space? Nope. It's the Brooklyn Nets, and they're not players in free agency that way, or even via trade. Is there a really good free agent class? Not this year. There isn't. And then the second thing, or I guess the third part of that is the league a little more wide open? And right now, everybody's a little like, the Thunder have it locked up for the next decade. And I think, we say those things, and that's happened exactly once in the last 20 years, and that was with the Warriors. Whereas they're not going anywhere for a while, and we had that, as I like to say, you could sit down in August and say, well, it's Warriors Cavs again in the finals, see you guys in June. And that's just kind of how it played out for a little bit there. But I think now what we have to kind of anchor on too is you have this new added complexity of second apron teams that didn't exist until really this year. This is the first year where we're seeing the full weight of the restrictions and the penalties as a second apron team. It's the first time we've ever seen draft picks get frozen with that. That's now happened with those 2032 picks for the Celtics, Suns, and Timberwolves. So those teams have already basically said, we have to work on this, especially the Celtics and the Suns. And that's going to put players who normally wouldn't be in a trade market available. You're going to have some super duper stars like Giannis, like KD, but then you're going to have a lot of really good players available too. And the way to go get them is going to be all trades. And that's going to be really fun to monitor. I always tell people trades are way more fun than straight free agency. Straight free agency impacts the player in the team he left and the team he's going to, then maybe a couple others if you thought they were real players for him. Where there's trades, you have a minimum of 2 teams, multiple players usually, and it's now more because of the complexities with the aprons, we're going to be more likely, we're going to see 3 and 4 and 5 team trades becoming a thing. And those are awesome. Like those get you, but those get me fired up and get me excited to write them up and break it all down and figure it all out. So it's going to be a really fun summer for that.
I don't think anybody argues that point. Look, you mentioned something that's a really nice transition into this finals matchup, which is we had that Warriors run, which I think it's safe to say was a dynasty, right?
Yeah.
And
100%.
The league essentially stepped in with the CBA and righted a wrong that kind of started that dynasty, right? With the balloon cap jump, and then dropped this CBA and these aprons and basically broke up that dynasty, and now has limited the ability for teams to get to that point again, right? To that long-term dynasty point. But just how long is too long with the CBA restrictions, right? So for Oklahoma City, for instance, if last year was their coming out party, and they sort of peaked in the middle of the postseason, and now they've gotten to the finish line and are trying to close the deal, where do we go from here, Keith? Where does the contract tell us? What do the restrictions tell us that are eventually going to slap in here? These are two non-tax-paying teams, as you noted a couple days ago on Twitter. This is a huge, huge deal for these two teams to be in the finals. But, the chicken's coming home eventually, right? So how long can this OKC team stay at least with this much firepower?
Yeah, and to that note, this is the first time since the luxury tax has been a thing that we've seen two non-taxpayers in the same NBA finals. There were 2 years where kind of maybe got to caveat it a little bit, but there were no luxury tax payments those 2 years because they didn't hit enough BRI to trigger them. So every year there's been luxury tax payments to be made. We've had at least one of the two teams, the winner or the loser, paying the tax. Now, for the Thunder specifically, because this is what everybody counters with, and I think it's a little bit of a, well, I'm not scared long term. Like, fine, let them have this year, but they're going to have to break up because of the second apron. Not next year. They still have Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams on rookie scale deals. So if anything, it'll be the summer of 26, 27 when they start triggering the tax and maybe playing around the aprons. But here's why they're set up to handle it quite well. They can go to max deals for those guys because they still have one more year for SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, on his current extension. Then what you're going to work into from there becomes, all right, the year after that, he'll be on a supermax deal. It'll be at the time the richest contract we've ever seen in NBA history. Yep. You have Holmgren and Williams likely on rookie max extensions. Then what's good for the Thunder though is, all right, well, Isaiah Hartenstein, we overpaid. They knew they overpaid in this contract. Remember when we gave you $60 million? How about now this next year you take 15 because we way plussed up your deal. Okay, great. That lowers that number. Hey, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, really good 9th, 10th men for us. Yep. But you know what? We have 400 draft picks that we can't even use. We're going to move those guys off because they're super tradable contracts for good players off to a team. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to pick up We're going to draft a couple guys, slot them in. And in those trades, we're going to add even more draft capital down the line. It's not likely to be the mega hauls of draft picks like what they got before, because that's where they were effectively acting as like a clearinghouse for every team. Like anytime it was, man, we need to dump some salary, Sam Presti was like, hey, I'm here, guys, just let me know. But what they're going to be able to do is they're going to, because of the draft picks they have for at least the next probably 3-ish years, they're going to be able to start replacing the guys that either age out or the guys where it's, all right, we're going to move out a $12 million guy because we can bring in a $5 million guy behind him. That's how they're going to be able to stretch this window out a little bit more. That said, there's two things that come into play. You never know what's going to happen injury-wise, right? It's, Celtics are where they are in part because Jason Tatum tore his Achilles, and they're probably going to have to look at breaking that team up a little earlier than they thought. Did Pat Riley's the disease of more, right? Like, who knows how long those guys are all going to be content being 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 in the pecking order because SGA is not going anywhere and he's the guy. Then I'm not saying right now it's all great, but once you've won a couple titles, it might be like, man, I'd like to be be the guy on a team. And I think I can get there. Maybe that's how it happens. Maybe it doesn't, but they are set up very well to push this window wider open than, or more wide open. Yes, I'm a writer. To expand that longer than what I think we're going to see with a lot of these other teams. I think a lot of other teams get in the apron. It's going to be about a 2-3 year apron run. And then it's going to be, all right, let's reset before the full weight of these restrictions and penalties hit. But with the Thunder, they have the ability to, I think, lengthen that out more so than a lot of these other teams can.
We hear so much about their bounty of draft picks, and we hear so little about, hey, maybe they should just draft people, right? Because they've got a 3-man core that rivals any in the league right now. And if you hit on even one of those draft picks every year, right? Every year, whether that's a late second round pick or the first round pick, you have instantly backfilled your depth, and you can move on from a Lou Dort instead of paying him $20 million a year, right?
Exactly.
That's the strategy. That's the chess game that has to happen to keep this thing together. But if I can just simplify it and simplify your thought quickly, next year's free. Next year's, they're good. It's just a transfer over in terms of finances. Everybody gets a slight raise, but contractually speaking, everybody that matters is locked in. Then we start talking about the Chet Holmgren extension coming in, the Jalen Williams extension coming in. By the way, those will be agreed to this October, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. By this, probably honestly July 1st. I think there's a good chance those will be no-brainer maxes right out of the gate, and off we go. I think there's a handful of those this year. Jalen Williams is definitely going to push, and they'll probably both get the 30% language as well to say, if we make all NBA, and I'm on it. I'm going to take Defensive Player of the Year or MVP out of the equation, but we make all NBA, you bump us to 30%. I think that'll be in there as well.
Right. So those won't kick in officially though until the 2026 season. So let's say it's July of 2026 right now. Okay. And we're staring at those 3 big salaries. We've got club options sitting around for Isaiah Hartenstein and Lou Dort and some other smaller pieces to talk about. So it's a huge offseason, essentially, looking at at just how the salaries break down in 2 summers here. The plan is to keep those 3 together, though, correct?
Absolutely.
At least
unless
one more season,
something meaningful changes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unless there's some major meaningful change between now and July or next year, when we're in the next league year, then maybe they make a move. But yeah, the plan is those 3. And again, the other thing that's really important to know, we're going to get probably 2, maybe 3 years of 10% cap jumps. Then it'll normalize again. It'll probably go back down into like the 5%-ish range. At least that's what a lot of people are pricing in. But when it goes up for the next couple of years, that's huge, because that just, again, we're not talking 10% off an $80 million cap anymore.
Right.
We're talking 10% off a cap that's going to be pushing $200 million here very quickly. So when you get those jumps, you're talking that's half of a max deal already that's coming up for some of these guys, or at least a third of it, for some of these guys. And that'll be huge, because that'll just create that buffer in that room in between there that they need. And that's just to the cap, never mind to the tax, which goes up. And this is another thing that I think has been a little overlooked in the, I hate to keep calling it the new CBA, because we're like 3-4 years into it now. The current CBA, everything goes up by the same rate. So if the cap goes up 10%, tax, first apron, second apron, they all go up 10%. That's huge, because that becomes a really big creator of buffers, especially when contract growth is capped at no more than 8% of the cap. So you're at least going to get a little bit of a wiggle room there where cap will go up. But that, again, that will normalize, that we'll get there. But for the Thunder, if Sam Presti called me, and he wouldn't, because he certainly doesn't need any help, but if he called me and said, hey, what's your advice? I would say, let tomorrow's problems be tomorrow's problems. Just, pay your guys, you'll figure it out. And again, you're sitting on these extra draft picks. And I think what you're going to see, like this year, they have 2 draft picks. They only have maybe 1 roster spot opening up. That's their single biggest immediate problem, is roster spots. But what that does is, all right, that second pick, who wants back into the first round? Who really likes somebody? Great. Give us your first rounder next year in a second. And then you just kick the can down the road, and you just keep kicking it down the road. It's close to my heart, but it's similar to kind of the Bill Belichick approach in football.
Yeah.
But limited to only a 2-round draft, so there's not quite as much movement. But that's what it was. It's like I have these extra picks, and the thing is, they don't want 5 rookies. It's going to be we'll take one in, and we'll just keep moving the other ones back. And that's all part of how you lengthen this window out.
I have to say this before we move on to Indiana. It feels like it was forever ago, and it probably was forever ago, right? But the last time Oklahoma City looked like this, right? that ridiculous window where they had Durant and Harden and lots of them, they specifically, forcibly broke this thing up because they simply just could not, financially, speaking, keep this band together. Will there be any part of this ownership that will come down to Sam Presti and say, look, we love what's happened here. We just can't foot the bill because of where things are about to get with this second apron and things like that. Is there any idea in your head that could become a possibility over the course of the next 72 months?
I don't think so, because I think they realize we're living in a completely different world now where all this TV money is locked in. There's no uncertainty about where the league as a whole is going. We're now established, rock solid in Oklahoma City. They've got a new arena coming, like all that stuff. So there's no more concerns of like, hey, is this even going to work here? Wherein, when they broke up and they made the Harden trade, there was still like, are we going to last? Is this going to work here? Fully. And it obviously has. The other piece too is they have paid quite a large sum of luxury taxes over the years when it was trying to maximize the latest of the Durant Westbrook window. And then the Westbrook himself, I shouldn't say himself, but you know what I mean, with other guys around him, as they were trying to really pull it. They paid a good chunk of tax money. So I think they're very much in a world where, no, let's just kind of keep this thing rolling the way it is. And again, it's because of the way they're set up, where I don't know that they're ever going to get super deep into those taxes unless it's for like a year or two at a time.
Fair enough. Yeah, and you're right. They can offset with draft picks whenever they need to change that landscape. So, all right, let's get to Indiana. Somewhat of a surprise, but when you look at the 2-3 window of roster construction, they should be here, right? They have done this correctly with a really balanced approach of sound drafting, savvy trades with the Halliburton move, and then, kind of a snake move to get Siakam out of Toronto in the middle of a season where there wasn't super certainty that he would re-sign and make this a more long-term deal. So they kind of played their cards, played a little chess themselves, and this roster is not only good, but deep and to some degree extremely young. There's a Miles Turner problem, right? He's a pending free agent, one of the bigger free agent names here. I don't think anybody believes he's going anywhere. So do you agree with that sentiment? And then what do the finances look like to keep him? And then obviously roster wise, what does that look like to keep this band together?
Yeah, really good team building because it was in a little bit of everything. It was trades, it was drafting, it was a couple key signings in there as well. Like a guy like TJ McConnell, kind of an afterthought, like, yeah, that's a nice pickup, and now has become a key rotation player for the Pacers. And then nailed the draft multiple times with guys, especially picking a little bit later. And then, like you said, it's just been those trades. They for lack of a better term, won the trades that they've made in a big way. So now, the Turner thing probably going to be a tax theme, and they have been a reluctant taxpayer, if we can put it that way. It's been like 20 years since they've done it. They have paid the tax before, but it was always a minimal amount. They're going to have to go into the tax, but it's not. They shouldn't be an apron team. They're probably not going to be anywhere near that because, again, this team isn't looking to re-sign Miles Turner and fill 5 roster spots. Like, they're going to re-sign Miles Turner, and then it'll be, okay, now we're good with that. They're out a draft pick in the future from the Siakam trade. That's fine. But, again, they've got the rest of their own picks, got a couple extra seconds, so they should be all right in that world. So I think we're really in a spot where the Pacers have a chance to make this. It's not quite the level of the Thunder where it's like, man, they're going to be around for a while with great players, but they should be around for a while as far as at least contenders in the East to lengthen this window out a little bit. Probably instead of this being like a 1 or 2 year run. This should be probably about a 3 or 4 year run because of the guys that they have and the guys they have under contract. And that's huge for them. And then even like a guy like Benedict Mathurin, who comes up and is a free agent coming up here, the emergence of a guy like Ben Shepherd makes it, hey, we're not going to get silly with Mathurin. Like if it means we got to move him, then we move him and we just plug Shepherd in and go forward with that. And that's big. And then value contracts for guys like Neesmith is on, a great deal now moving forward. Like they're just really well built, really smartly built roster.
Isn't it scary? Because I know you do this for a living and you eat and breathe this stuff, but sometimes I'm looking at an NFL roster, Keith, and it just feels so simple. Like the moves that are going to get made this offseason, you could write it down in Sharpie. It seems like such a simple plan for the offseason. You already said everything that is screaming off the page when I look at this Pacers roster, right? Which is Mathurin's definitely getting dangled out there for some sort of, guard replacement or center replacement depth piece, plus probably one of those draft picks that they're trying to get back in the fold here. So everything else, though, here's how I equate the Pacers, because not only are they damn good and young and fast, they got a little lucky here. And here's what I mean by that. The contracts you mentioned, the Nembhard contract, the McConnell contract, the Neesmith contract, even Obi Toppin, which, he's a specific role, but man, clutch at times as well. Mm-hmm. And has that Knicks crossover, which is going to become even more important if these are the top two teams kind of coming down the stretch here for the next couple of seasons. But they were able to sign those contracts when they hadn't yet peaked as a team. You know what I mean? So the numbers for these players didn't have to be surplused with winning added onto it, with major winning added onto it. They were a successful team and they were successful players for sure. And they'd outkick their coverage of their rookie deals, but they kind of got them on bridge deals versus anything close to a max contract for what they were from what they've been able to produce in 2024 here. So these numbers look phenomenal through 2027. So to your point, there's at least one more year of really good core stability versus what OKC has with their 3-4 man core, which is super dangerous for a weak Eastern Conference right now.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's more, I'm glad you pointed out the whole didn't have to pay him with winning on top of it.
Yeah.
It's more of an NFL thing than it is an NBA thing, just roster sizes being what they are. But we saw it every year. Teams win a Super Bowl, and then other teams like, well, let's go get their guys, right? And I think the big mistake is like, yeah, but the problem is you're getting their guys, you're not getting them, right? Like it's, and I say this as someone who lived the high life as a Patriots fan for 2 decades of cool, you signed our guy, but you didn't get Belichick and Brady and the system that, they've built and everything around that. And you know what? They're cool. Why did you get that guy? Because they've got the next guy already ready to go. Yeah. And that's what's key, I think, in the NBA now is whether you have the next guy or at least you have the ability to go get the next guy, you're going to lose some players. You can't keep everybody. Like it's impossible. The new CBA is set up to, if you draft and develop well, yes, you can re-sign everybody, but we're going to bury you in restrictions and penalties that really lock you in a place where you can't do that. So you're going to lose some people, but the key is, do you have the next guy set up? And the earlier you can get ahead of contracts, the better. Now there's risk in that.
Yeah.
Because you pay an Andrew Nembhard and then it's like, crap, he didn't quite get there. Now you have somebody who's a little overpaid, but that's the difference between you can live with a little overpaid versus a lot overpaid. And I would rather pay early and be a little bit ahead of it, and maybe the guy ends up a little overpaid, than now I'm chasing and I'm having to go trade for a player who is, we're all like, yeah, the guy's good, but yeah, the contract's not great, but we had to do it. Right? Kind of the Bradley Beal situation of like, all right, well, I get why they did it. And then you're stuck. And now you're in a spot where it's like, we can't get out of this. And that's obviously harder because of the no trade, but that's where you can end up. I'd rather pay my own and just kind of work it out. But yeah, really, that's the fun thing about this is the headline becomes 2 non-tax paying teams. The new CBA, is it working and all that? And I have said, let's not rush to that yet. It's 1 year. Like there's a good chance next year we'll be right back to tax-paying teams or in the finals. But it's cool to have 2 different teams that built, quote unquote, the right way. And the important thing is there's no one right way to build a team. There's like 500 wrong ways to do it, but the right way can be dependent on your circumstance. And it's been really fun to watch these teams come together and grow over the last couple of years and kind of take the steps, right? Pacers took a step last year, Thunder took a step, and then another step, and now here we are where, it should be. I'm really looking forward to the finals and everything and all that, because I think it's going to be a blast with these two teams.
I'll get you out of here on 2 questions, and they're both putting you on the spot, which I know you love. We're having this conversation about roster construction and how these two teams at least are similar in the effect of, kind of started from the bottom and from a balance standpoint, added pieces left and right to get to where they are today. Is there a team out there right now that is the next version of this? I have a couple in mind. I'm just wondering where your head lives with this.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Utah could be this if they get it right in the draft. That's the issue, and the lottery clearly didn't do them any favors this year, pushing them back the maximum of 4 spots. The other one the other two, one's a further ahead than the other. One is Houston, loaded with young talent, got some tradable guys, also have extra picks, which is huge. Then the other one is San Antonio, simply because of Wembanyama. Wembanyama and all kinds of flexibility moving forward. They're going to be the team that pops up over the next, I'll say 4 to 5 years as well. That's where Superstar X is wanting to go because, you'll hear all the things, and it'll ultimately be, they have Wembanyama. That's all that really matters. Like that's why, but you're going to hear no state taxes in Texas and all the things that go into it. But those are the 3 teams that are all there. And meanwhile, every person who's a fan of a Western Conference team is like, what the heck? Why is every team in the West? It's, these powerhouses that are coming. And it's just, I'll give you my very quick version of my working theory on that is when you become a bad team in the West, you become a awful team. So you push down, so you get draft capital, you recycle, and you come. In the East, when you become bad, you never get necessarily pushed all the way to the bottom.
Sure.
You get pushed only so far. And then, of course, when you have things like the lottery bouncing the Mavs way and the Spurs way a couple times in a row, it kind of is what it is. Okay.
All great choices. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, though, how you're not including your hometown here. Because I feel like Orlando has done 40% of the work, and now it's just on the front office to fill in these blanks and make some savvy moves. Do you not have confidence in Orlando doing the job? It's not that I don't have confidence. It's I don't know what they're going to do. Yeah.
They have hit the point where, for me, they are kind of getting Memphis Grizzly-ish, where it's been too precious with their own drafted and developed players. And I say that, and I do mean it as a criticism, because what happens is teams, just like fans, get super attached to the guys they draft and they develop because they look at this story. We plucked him late in the first round or second round, and now he's turned into a borderline all-star. And guess what? We got him on a great contract and all that. And it's like, yeah, and he's your 8th man on a middling playoff team. And you have 4 of those guys. You could take those 4 guys, trade them, and go get somebody who can be your second best, third best. Big thing for the Magic that I will say is you learned in the last year's playoffs through this year into next year. Couple things. One, your coaching staff is rock solid. When Banchero and Wagner went out this year, then followed by the other Wagner going out, then Suggs, they could have said, all right, the wheels have come off. This year's done. They kept them together. They won enough till those guys got back, and then they won big. And then in the playoffs, Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner went toe-to-toe with the Celtics every night for 5 games. Sure, it was a 5-game series, but they were right there battling them, and those guys showed you, we're ready. We're ready for this. Now, what I am encouraged about is Jeff Weltman, I think is president, whatever, they make up all these title inflation things. But the head front office exec came out at the postseason press conference and said, we're ready to go, right? Like we are in now win now phase, and we know we need to do more. And part of that is we know how it goes. You don't start winning more. Banchero and Wagner, whether they're under contract or not, are going to be like, hey, are we doing this? Because if we're not, I'd like to go somewhere else. Because now I've gotten paid. I'm not worried about the getting paid part. It's now I want to win. I want to compete for championships. I think there's a chance. I want to see what they do this summer because they need to be super aggressive. It cannot be a small move where it's, well, we added a nice sixth man. No, it needs to be a real move to add somebody who moves it forward. If so, I'll come back and tell you they did it. They won me over. I'm fully there. I just don't know that they're going to commit the way they need to.
They're my sleeping giant for sure. I think there's a real chance because of everything you just laid out. I hate to do this because I know these are kind of your two teams. It kind of feels like that early era of Tatum and Brown in Boston before Boston decided to pull off the diapers and make swinging trades, right? The Porzingis move, the Holiday move, obviously, which fell in their laps. But it took that, right? It took that to get to the next level. Yeah. So that's where we are. And they're one move away, Keith.
And part of that was trading away guys like Aaron Nesmith to get Brogdon, who ultimately led to Holiday, trading away Marcus Smart, who is beloved.
That's right.
By the fan base and the front office and everybody involved, trading him away. You have your stars. Those guys become I say this all the time. People get so mad because they'll say, well, these 7 guys on our roster are untouchable. No, they're not. There's maybe 7 untouchable players in the entire league.
That's right.
You don't have all 7 of them on your roster. You might have 1, maybe 2, if you're really in a good spot. Now, there are hard to trade for guys, and then there are hard to trade away guys as well. But you can't be too precious with your own. If you want to win, and ultimately that's what this should be about, especially from a fan standpoint. All you should care about is, are we trying to win championships? And if you are, you have to be willing to give up some of your main guys to go get it done. And that's a big part of where Orlando has to get to now.
85% of the players who started as Final Four starters in the playoffs this year were acquired via trade. 85% of the 20 players who took the court to start. That's it. That's just how it happens. You don't stay in one place and you don't keep players in one place for very long in order to get yourself an actual starting 5 that can compete for titles. So I'm with you. I understand you being hesitant because it's been a minute in Orlando.
Yeah, it's been a little while. They took the slow build up approach after they took over, and then the team surprisingly made the playoffs a couple years in a row, which I think if you could pour truth serum into the Magic execs, they were like, we didn't really want those 2 years, but it was fine. It gave the fans hope again. Then you got Wagner, then you got Banchero, and now people are ready to go. And I've said this a lot too. People don't realize here now you have what's happening now in Orlando. It's your first generation of real Magic fans, because when I moved here, they weren't new, but they were still kind of new. And people were moving and pouring into the city from other places, and you came with your team already. I moved here as a Celtics fan. I'm not giving up on that. Sure. Now what you have is people who are 20, 30 years old who grew up here that are like, I'm a Magic fan. They're my team, much like, all other established cities with sports. And that's huge too, because now what's fun is they're no longer like a cool thing to do in between college football season and, other stuff happening in summertime fun. Now it becomes, hey, I love this team. And what's nice is now they put pressure on the front office, the ownership group. They get loud, they get cranky when it's, hey, we got to go for it. And their Magic fans are being pretty loud about, this was great. We're happy we made the playoffs twice. Let's go be better. Let's try to get out of the first round. Let's really make moves. And that's it's a good choice by you. I just need to see it happen.
I like it. Last one quickly. Thunder in.
Oh yeah. I like how you are doing the Thunder. Yeah. I'm picking the Thunder too. I'm picking Thunder in 6.
Okay.
I'm hoping for 7.
I was going to say that means it's in Indiana, right?
Yeah, it'll be in Indiana, but I think the Thunder are ready to close. I think they can close on the road if they need to. Here's the key to the series entirely. Can the Pacers do a good job of not giving the ball away and avoiding live ball turnovers? They've been really good at it all year, but they haven't faced defenses like the Thunder in this playoffs. The Thunder, the best team I've ever seen, taking a 5-point deficit and turning it into a 15-point lead in the time it took to go grab a drink out of the fridge and come back. And that's how they do it. Live ball turnovers, especially at home, they get the building rocking, and the next thing you know, this thing's a blowout and it's over. That's going to be what the Pacers have to go against. But with the way the Pacers have answered the questions against the Cavs, took care of them, went into New York and really kind of ran a roughshod over the Knicks and had, all kinds of fun there. I think they're ready for this. I just don't know that I don't know that they are as good as Oklahoma City is when you look at all the things they do well. But they counter some of the Thunder strengths in a big, big way. So it should be a really fun series. I'm hoping for 7 because we only got max 7 of these left in this year. And then, and then you're just waiting for a while. So let's see. But yeah, Thunder and 6 is my pick.
Keith, I asked for 15 minutes. You gave me 40. So
yeah, I'm not surprised.
It was all good stuff. I appreciate it as always. Thank you. All right, let's talk some NFL quickly. It's dead cap season, as you might know. And the NFL gets fun and then gets more fun and then gets more fun, right? That's free agency, the draft, and now June when we get our kind of second wave of transactional processes, starting with players who were designated as post-6-1 releases back in March, which meant they become free agents immediately, but their contracts sort of freeze. The cap hit remains through June 1st, and then the dead cap that exists is allowed to split between 2025 and 2026. That's not an even split, by the way. It's dead cap for this year stays in this year. Anything down the road, 26 plus, becomes 2026 dead cap. So if you're looking at it, and especially the piece I just posted on spotrac.com, and you're seeing, Malik Collins has 1.3 million this year and another 4 million next year. Why can't that just be 2.5 this year, 2.5 next year? There's actually a formula to it, which is you take the actual numbers from this year and they stay, and then any future numbers become next year's dead cap. And for the most part, that's exactly how these 13 to 14 to 15 players, we've got a couple of retirements built in here, look on the article on spotrac.com. So that's all been updated. All the NFL cap space is now updated accordingly by these teams. We've also got that in the piece, by the way. The Jets lead the way with 13.5 million new cap savings per these two moves. That would be Aaron Rodgers and CJ Mosley officially becoming released. The Browns freed up almost 10 million. Houston about 9.5, and the list goes down. The Jaguars, of course, the least amount of cap space saved because, well, they owe Gabe Davis $11.5 million cash. And that's factored into 20 million of total dead cap over the next 2 seasons per his 6-1 release. An unfortunate swing and the miss for the Jacksonville Jaguars, though they have righted that ship with obviously the Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter joining the roster this year. So they've got bigger fish to fry on that roster. And it was simply just taking on the financial hit of not just Davis, but a lot of players this offseason with the new front office and a kind of newfound optimism inside of Jacksonville going forward. So that piece is live. I also posted a piece that includes the top dead cap hit per team for 2025. Obviously, that's a snapshot version of that. Things will change. For instance, who knows what happens in Miami with Jalen Ramsey? As we noted last week, it seems like there's a move coming there via trade, and he won't be the last. We'll see a few more players move here via release. A couple of retirements that have to process still, the big one being Derek Carr, and some trades, not only today and this week, but down the road as we get into camp and injuries happen, and you know how this all goes. It's a marathon, not a sprint. We've got about 90 days before opening week in the NFL, so there's plenty of time for changes, upgrades, and unfortunate injuries as well. So those two pieces are now live on Spotrac. And if there's any questions about how this dead cap stuff works, trades that are going to be processed, things get screwy when you have retained salary, as we expect could happen with Jalen Ramsey, who's owed $21 million this year. The Derek Carr stuff and his $30 million that he's foregoing per his retirement, that's going to change the landscape of both cap and cash for his eventual retirement once that's processed. And it's never a dull moment. Let's put it that way. We're always learning, always trying to understand things a little bit differently because every single contract has new wrinkles, differences, incentives that become cap credits, and all sorts of fun things we have to get to at the end of the day. So we're at the point now where things will split. Every single release, even the $3,000 signing bonus on a UDFA who gets waived over the next couple of days here, that will split as 1,000 this year and 2,000 next year. And we'll keep piling up the money going forward. But that's the dead cap split that's happening right now. 13 players that were designated back in March have officially been processed. Those retirements that have been waiting for this moment so that teams can split the dead cap accordingly will officially be processed. Most of them today at 4 p.m. Eastern. But like I said, the car stuff might take some time. We'll see when that all comes down to fruition and what it officially looks like on the books going forward. My thanks to Keith Smith. Please follow him at Keith Smith NBA on X. Please read him constantly, pretty much every other day at this point, on Spotrac.com, and check out the new NFL pieces I posted this morning as well. For Scott Allen, my name is Mike Giannetti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Spotrac Podcast.